Did you know there's no Oppo Find X4 because the number 4 is considered unlucky in China? On the other hand, 8 is seen as super lucky, and lucky for us, we've got not one, but 2 Oppo Find X8s to check out, the Ultra and the Pro. We're diving into the design, display, performance, cameras, and battery to help you figure out which one's the real lucky charm and the smarter buy. Hey, I'm Olive, your host here at Versus.com. Starting with design, both phones have matte aluminium frames, however, the one on the Ultra is flat, which makes it seem much thicker than the Pro, even though they're almost the same thickness. The Pro, by the way, has curved front and back panels. Speaking of back panels, both of our units come with frosted glass, though the Pro has a subtle texture to it. That gigantic camera bump on the back, it's always black on the Ultra, while on the Pro, it's either black or an aluminium finish, depending on the color. In terms of weight, the Find X8 Ultra is 230 grams and the Find X8 Pro is 216 grams. So as always, let's check in with the team and see who likes which design best.
The Ultra.
The Pro.
The Ultra.
The Ultra.
The Ultra. The Pro. What about you?
I'll go for the Ultra. Now, let's check out these displays. The Ultra comes with a flat 6.82-inch display, whereas the Pro carries a curved 6.7-inch display. Both are LTPO AMOLED panels with a 120Hz refresh rate. We simulated sunlight at over 100,000 lux and measured how bright the screen typically gets using a full white screen. The Ultra reached 1,581 nits and the Pro hit 1,469 nits, both plenty bright for outdoor use. For security, both come with under-display ultrasonic fingerprint scanners. For even more info on screen specs, including our measured peak brightness, feel free to pause the video right here. We have to say, even though these screens aren't very different in real-life use, we slightly prefer the one on the Ultra, mainly because it's flat, which makes it a lot easier if you want to, for example, put a screen protector on it. But now let's check out the speakers on these phones. Both phones come with stereo speakers, one at the bottom and the other doubling as an earpiece. Give them a listen.
You know what I'm saying? Ha 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 ha. Yeah. Nah. Spot. Hot, I could burn in my slumber.
While both have quite a bit of bass, the volume levels on the Ultra are a bit higher, which might come in handy if you're looking to have a party for one. But now let's check out some photos and videos. Both phones rock 50-megapixel main cameras, but they're not identical. The Ultra has an f1.8 aperture, while the Pro is a bit wider at f1.6. The real difference is the sensor. The Ultra packs a 1-inch sensor, while the Pro uses a 1/1.4-inch sensor, which is still pretty large. In this first shot, both phones perform pretty similarly. However, the Ultra shows a bit less artificially bright highlights on my face. Plus, it gives you more natural background blur. Indoors, it's a pretty similar story. The Pro, again, shows that face tuning, while the Ultra looks far more natural. On top of that, the Pro also has colors that are a bit more boosted compared to the Ultra. The ultra-wide cameras are identical on both phones. We're talking about 50 megapixel with an f2.0 aperture and a 120-degree field of view. Photos are pretty similar here too. The Ultra does have a slight magenta tint and it's slightly brighter than the Pro, though that could just be a one-off. Indoors, the Ultra captures far more detail in the shadows, like on this plant. The Pro, on the other hand, keeps desaturating and smoothing my skin. While some might like that, we prefer more natural-looking photos. In portrait shots with the main camera, the Pro looks a bit too cold, and the face tuning strips away a lot of my skin texture. Also, while edge detection is amazing on both, the Pro did slip up right here. With the telephoto lenses, edge detection is pretty much perfect on both. Interestingly though, the Pro looks a bit sharper and contrasty than the Ultra. Whether that's good or bad, it's really up to you. Shifting gears to video with the main lens, the Ultra can record at up to 4K 120 FPS while the Pro caps out at 4K 60 FPS, but for our comparisons, we always stick to 30 FPS. At first glance, both videos look very similar. However, the Pro has a bit of a green tint, whereas the Ultra offers more natural colors. On top of that, the Ultra also provides far more natural bokeh. For video with the ultra-wide camera, both are capped at 4K 60 FPS, but again, we stick to 30 FPS. Videos with these cams are pretty much the same as with the main cameras, with the Ultra looking a bit more natural. However, we did notice that the Pro captures quite a bit more detail in some surfaces compared to the Ultra. For portrait video, both phones max out at 1080p 30 FPS, which is on the low side. In this mode, both videos are just identical, and while the Pro stabilization isn't the best, it's non-existent in the Ultra. This definitely seems like a bug, and we're really hoping that it gets corrected soon. At the front, we're looking at identical 32 megapixel shooters with an f2.4 aperture and a 21mm equivalent focal distance. In outdoor shots, we actually found ourselves preferring the photos from the Pro, as the Ultra has a pretty heavy magenta undertone. The Pro also offers much more natural background blur. In low light conditions, that magenta tone on the Ultra becomes even more noticeable. The Pro looks more natural, sharper, and it does a better job of keeping noise levels really low. As for video, both reach 4K 60 FPS, but again, we film at 30 FPS. Even though both have the same camera, the Ultra comes with autofocus. Quality-wise, we actually prefer the dynamic range the Pro offers. It doesn't blow out the sky as much, and the colors just better represent the scene.
So now let's test out the audio on both of these devices. We're gonna start off over here with the new Ultra. What do you guys think? How do I sound over here? Am I sounding good? Is it blocking out noise well? What do we think? And then let's move on to the Pro. Does it sound any better or worse than the Ultra? Has the Ultra actually got any improvements? As always, let's talk about it.
The Ultra definitely shows an improvement over the Pro. It's got good volume and great wind noise cancellation. The Pro, on the other hand, sounds quite muffled, and there's a lot of wind noise in the video. For zoom, things get interesting. First off, both have a 50 megapixel periscope telephoto lens. The Ultra's has an f2.1 aperture, while the Pro's is f2.6. Both offer 3 times optical zoom. Then there's a second 50 megapixel periscope telephoto. The Ultra has a f3.1 aperture, and the Pro goes with f4.3. Both give you 6 times optical zoom though. At 3 times optical zoom, both photos look similar, though the Pro has a tiny bit more contrast. At 6 times optical zoom with those second telephoto lenses, the Ultra gives you a brighter sky, while the Pro makes the buildings a bit brighter instead. At 30 times digital zoom, both phones use AI to enhance their photos, and honestly, both ain't bad. However, the Pro does look a bit cold. Finally, at the absolute limit of 120 times digital zoom, both photos are definitely AI enhanced. To our eye though, the one from the Ultra looks a bit more realistic. For low light with the main camera, the Pro is interestingly the warmer one this time, offering better looking skin tones. Aside from colors, sharpness and noise levels are pretty good in both photos. With the ultra-wide cameras, the Ultra does capture a bit more detail in the darker areas, which you can see on this chair here. Both have low noise levels, but that comes at a cost of losing a lot of fine detail. In portrait mode, the Ultra switches places with the Pro, and now it's the one doing that highlight lifting on my face. However, for edge detection, both perform amazingly. With the telephoto lenses, the Ultra does capture more shadow detail, but also applies some skin smoothing to my face. However, the Pro goes absolutely overboard with this, making me look like a wax figure. On video with the main cam, the Pro has a rather cold tone and also introduces a green tint in the shadows. The Ultra, on the other hand, looks far more pleasing, and it also does the best job of controlling the bright highlight from the lamp behind me. Switching to the ultra-wide camera, there's a lot of noise and camera shake in both videos. The Ultra has a bit more control over the bright lamp here, but honestly, both are far from perfect. So there you have it. The Ultra definitely shows improvements in most categories over the Pro. However, in ultra-wide video during the day or portrait video, the Pro is still the top dog. Hopefully, future updates will further improve the Ultra's camera performance. Alright, let's fire up the dyno and check the performance on these bad boys. The Find X8 Ultra is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Extreme Edition, which is just a fancy rename of the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Meanwhile, the Find X8 Pro comes with MediaTek's Dimensity 9400. Both of our units come with 16 gigabytes of RAM. Here you can also check out the other RAM and storage options available, though availability might vary depending on where you're buying. To really see what these phones can do, we'll throw them into some real-world testing, starting with gaming. We'll run 30-minute sessions with cooldown time in between. In Grid Legends, we modified the preferences file to unlock 60 FPS in graphics mode, as the game is capped to 30 FPS by default. The Ultra was definitely the best performer here, hitting a maximum of 55 FPS. And while it did drop to 34 FPS, it was still better than the Pro. That said, it got absolutely toasty, reaching a whopping 58 degrees Celsius. Next, we launched Wuthering Waves and cranked the graphics all the way up. Once again, the Ultra was the top dog, showing extremely good stability, dropping only a single FPS. However, it was again the hottest, reaching 53 degrees Celsius. Then we fired up Bloons TD6 and flooded the screen with thousands of units to really stress the CPUs. Here, both started at around 60 FPS, but this time the Pro actually preserved more FPS, though the difference wasn't huge. For temperatures, they were identical. Moving on from gaming, we exported 99 photos in Lightroom. The Ultra beat the Pro here as well, finishing the export in 3 minutes and 37 seconds. The Pro completed the task 48 seconds later. Next up, we rendered a 3-minute 4K 30 FPS video in CapCut. Same story here, the Ultra took the lead, finishing the rendering in just 38 seconds, which is actually pretty impressive. For fun, we also opened a massive Microsoft Excel file with over 4 million cells. For what feels like the 100th time, the Ultra kept winning, opening the huge file in 14 seconds, 7 seconds quicker than the Pro. Now, let's check out some benchmarks. In Geekbench 6, the Ultra also showed better performance here in single-core scores, with the Pro following a bit close behind. However, in multi-core performance, the gap was even greater, as the Ultra left the Pro more than 1,200 points behind. In 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme Stress Test, both phones reached around 6,400 points in their best loop, and both dropped to around 3,000 points in their lowest loop. Technically speaking, the Pro did perform a tiny bit better here, but it was by a super small margin. In Antutu, things were also pretty similar between the two. However, the Ultra came out on top with an advantage of more than 100,000 points. And lastly, we ran the cross-platform disk check benchmark to measure read and write speeds. Once again, the Ultra was much quicker in every category, especially in sequential read, which is kind of expected since the Ultra comes with UFS 4.1 and the Pro uses UFS 4.0. So while it's definitely not a huge difference, the Ultra does technically perform better than the Pro. That said, the Pro is already a powerhouse, so honestly, most people would be perfectly fine with either option. Now, moving on to software, both run ColorOS 15 based on Android 15. Oppo promises 5 major OS updates and 6 years of security updates for the Pro. They haven't officially said what the Ultra will get, but we're hoping it follows the same update plan. ColorOS 15 honestly takes some heavy inspiration from iOS, especially at the control center. That said, the UI is super smooth and apps open and close very quickly. Our review units come with the Chinese ColorOS version, which has a few disadvantages. You'll find untranslated apps and a good amount of bloatware, though most can be uninstalled. It has Google Play Services support, but you'll need to install the Play Store yourself. The AI assistant, Burino, is backed by DeepSeek and can write English, but you can also install Google Gemini and Lens from the Play Store if you prefer. So keep that in mind if you are thinking about picking up a Chinese variant. Alright, now let's move on to our last category. X8 Ultra comes with a dual-cell 6,100 mAh battery, while the X8 Pro features an oddly specific 5,910 mAh single cell, both with silicon carbon technology. To give you an idea of their battery life, we started our performance testing with fully charged batteries. At the end of it, the Ultra had 30% battery left, while the Pro still had 46%, making it the more efficient of the two. As for charging, the Ultra supports 100 watts for wired charging, and the Pro comes in at 80 watts. For wireless wireless charging both support 50 watts. Additionally, both also support wired and wireless reverse charging. Now, in our charging test using a 100-watt Oppo SuperVOOC charger, the Ultra juiced up to 100% in just 37 minutes, reaching a maximum of 80 watts. Meanwhile, the Pro finished in 57 minutes, hitting 67 watts, which isn't too shabby either. Neither of these phones are officially sold in the US or many other countries, to be fair, but you can still find them through third-party online retailers. The Find X8 Ultra can be found for around $1,150, while the Find X8 Pro goes for about $1,050. That's without any discounts. So that makes for a roughly $100 difference between the Pro and the Ultra, which, to be fair, could buy you about 100 spoons at IKEA. So just like what we saw with the Vivo X200 Ultra, the Oppo Find X8 Ultra has definitely improved in the camera department, shooting more natural photos, which we really do appreciate. Performance-wise, there's also an improvement, though the differences with the Pro isn't huge. Personally, we do think that the X8 Pro is great for most people unless you really want the best of the best and have around $100 to spare for the Ultra. Of course, you can find links to both of these devices in the description below. And hey, if you want to see how the Find X8 Ultra stacks up against the Vivo Galaxy and Xiaomi Ultra models, just tap this link right here. Or if you're curious about how the Find X8 Pro compares to the Vivo, Xiaomi, and Honor Pro models, tap this other one. Before you go follow the darn train, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and hit subscribe, as we're always testing new devices to help you make the best choice. We'll see you in our next video, and until then, take care.